You're listening to Top Line Toronto with Nik Lynam, Brady Ricketts, and Jordan Voth.
Welcome back to another season of the Top Line Toronto Maple Leafs podcast, and we're doing things a little different this season. Last year, you had me and Brady working on this, and the one thing I wanted to bring in was some even more passion. Some belief in the blue and white. And our audio engineer, the genius himself, behind the quality you hear weekly, Jordan Voth has the passion. So Jordan Voth, let's start with you. Welcome to the show. I know we tried to do all this last week. Unfortunately, first go, we lost some audio. Let's get back to it. Let's introduce you. Didn't happen.
Yeah,
Vother, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. Yeah, like we were in preseason mode as well. So doing good though, watching the Leafs preseason, and it's definitely one of the preseasons out there. So pretty good.
I for one am glad preseason hockey is officially done. It is just so hard to watch NHL versus AHL players every fucking second night. But the Leafs have definitely given us a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to be on this journey with you guys. I'm Nik Lynam. I'm going to be hosting these two Beliefers all season long. Let's bring in the guy who was here last year, Brady Ricketts. How are you doing this morning, Brady?
So good. Happy to run it back again. Vother, I know you said preseason form. Glad to have you on the roster nonetheless. Waiver wire, couldn't be happier you made it past it. I know we're a little bit ahead of waiver wire for the NHL right now, but so lucky to have you. I can't wait to look sane and tame on this show, not be the crazy one. So that's going to be fantastic. Even though I think I'm the true believer.
I'm sending you guys my therapy bills.
Ricketts is used to being the tame one, as he co-hosts me on the Jets podcast as well. So let's get into the Leafs this morning, because I think there is a lot of interesting storylines, despite it being the core coming back, mostly the same core. Let's start with the big move this summer, and that was the Sheldon Keefe exiting, Craig Berube entering. The Leafs went out and got the guy that was seen as the biggest name on the market this year. He's got a cup ring. Let's go to Voth first on this one. We'll rotate, but I want to start Vother on this. How you feeling about the Craig Berube hiring, and do you think it's going to bear fruit and help bring this Leafs team to new heights?
So, okay, first off, Sheldon Keefe is going to win the Jack Adams this year.
I think so too.
Write it down. That guy's winning that is a good coach. But I understand that given the futility of the roster, what's happened so many times over the years, that the easiest thing to change is the coach. And I can get behind that. However, I think in that situation, the guy that I really wanted, I would have been looking at a Jay Woodcroft. I look at the success that he had with the Oilers' offensive players, and I would love to see that kind of success on the Leafs roster, because they do have the offensive tools to play like that. Craig Berube feels it feels like they're going with, the obvious choice here, and they're leaning into that. We're going to be hard to play against. I do want to put this out there that, I think skilled players are also hard to play against, right? We have this idea that he dumped the puck in and went and hit the defenseman, so he's hard to play against. But if a guy has the puck all the time, that's hard to play against too. But that being said, I don't hate the Berube hiring, but it's not my first choice. I am curious to see which players endear themselves to him. I think Nick Robertson is going to endear himself to him in a really big way, because one thing about Robertson, outside of his shot, and I know we'll talk about him later, it's his work ethic that's really, really impressive. And I could see him flourishing under Berube. But I'm not crazy about the hire. It's okay. It's not awful, but it's not getting me excited. What do you think?
Yeah, where are you at, Brady Ricketts?
So I just took a quick peek at betting odds on the Jack Adams Award, and Vother is 100% correct. Sheldon Keefe is the outright favorite at plus 650 right now.
Yeah.
Followed by Andrew Burnett and then Craig Berube. Also, I saw a sneaky little bit. If you want to make a charitable donation, you can take Matt Rempe for Hart at plus 50,000. But nonetheless, like he's right that the easiest change to make is the coach. I don't know how a different voice really is going to make that significant of a change, because Sheldon Keefe is a good coach. And even like there's some clips that came out on the Amazon Prime series. I think one of the last games against Boston, Sheldon Keefe's in the room being like, you guys know that like we haven't had a clean shot beat Swayman yet this series. You guys got to get into the front of the net, into the dirty zones. That's what you need to tell them, whether they do it or not. I don't know if Craig Berube is going to make that change unless it's like taught. Like I don't know. We have to wait and see. Like I think we might get more out of depth guys than we
Brady,
might
how would you feel about How would you feel about Woodcroft?
I didn't really think about it like that, because like Woodcroft was never really on any of the media like radar. I didn't remember from last year. It was always like there were two names that were always associated with going to the Leafs, and it was Craig Berube or Doug Armstrong when the GM position was open. So like, that was always kind of like what I was thinking of. I never even thought of Jay Woodcroft. I don't know. It's none like the same. I don't know if Jay Woodcroft would have been a good answer for me as well. Like I think what you have in that Leafs room, like I think I could coach that team to a 500 record like easily. It's just like how I think what's going to have to change there is the motivational, really. Yeah. And if they think Craig Berube is the better motivator, fuck it. Why not? Let's roll.
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting to see how Craig Berube tries to push some different buttons. Let's start with one of the first buttons pushed in Toronto. And that was the captaincy switch. Obviously, That's typically a pretty big deal in NHL organizations, especially when you are transferring the captaincy from someone on the roster to another guy on the roster. It normally creates a bit of a dynamic there. I think we all had seen it coming at some point during Austin Matthews' career, but Austin Matthews officially named captain by Craig Berube and Brad Treliving's group this summer. John Tavares still around, will be wearing an A on the last year of his big deal. Let's start with Ricketts on this one. How are we feeling about the captaincy change and what that kind of means for the franchise?
Yeah, it's something that, like you said, we saw this coming a mile down the road. I think it probably would have happened the year that the Leafs had the preseason in Newfoundland, but then there was that stupid stunt Matthews had with mooning that security guard or whatnot. And then I think it went to JT because there's even leaked media photos, stuff like that. But it was the right time. Like, and it sounds like it wasn't, a surprise. It sounded like, I think when Friedge talked about it, that it's something that stemmed from like the exit interviews at the end of the season, where it was discussion with John Tavares and Austin Matthews and the organization as a whole of how the transition should go. I really kind of thought that it would go to when the end of John Tavares' contract was done. And it's no secret that they're still working on extension with John Tavares. I think he's still got very serviceable years at not $11 million. But it was the right time. It's the right person to do it to. We already saw John Tavares' kids were wearing Matthews jerseys with the C on them when they were handing it over. So there's no ill will. I'm honestly just excited to see what happens with Austin Matthews with the captaincy. If he even can take another step above what he's already been doing, which is absurd.
How about you, Voth?
So I want to go somewhere where nobody else has gone with this, and I'll put this question to you guys, is being the captain of an NHL team a compensatory factor?
I would say yeah. There's a lot more too. There's a lot more behind the scenes you have to do.
There's a higher degree of responsibility, right? We know in NHL teams that the captain is generally responsible for planning stuff. Yep. They are responsible for communicating with the officials. They are obligated to the media every game. So by all means, being the captain of an NHL team is a compensatory factor. And you could make the argument that being the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs is probably one that's worth the most compensation. What I think is interesting, and everything you said about Austin Matthews' captaincy is correct. It's time for him to be the leader of the team. It's time for him to take that step. What I do think is really interesting is the Leafs have done this now with 2 contracts they've recently signed, where they've signed them under their current situations, and then immediately once there's ink to paper, they've changed it. So we're now seeing Austin Matthews gets the C put on him, and we're now seeing William Nylander move to center, which is when we all know that a center is more valuable than a winger. I think it's an interesting way to make those contracts kind of a little bit more digestible, because even I remember when Dion Phaneuf was captain, and he was a terrible captain, and he wasn't a good player. He was not worth the $7 or $8 million he was being paid. But I remember thinking, like, if I have to speak to the Toronto media on this Leafs team every day, that's a compensatory factor. I also think that a little bit about Adam Lowry too. Like, you know, he's a $3-4 million player, but he wears the C. He's accountable to Winnipeg's sports media every day. So I think that's it's interesting to see that, and that leads me to think, like, what are they going to do with Mitch Marner that does that same kind of thing? Like, how are you going to pay him the 12.5 that he's going to get, because it's what he's going to get? And how are you going to extract more value out of that deal in ways that beyond his on-ice performance? But yeah, honestly, like, giving him the C, it was an obvious choice. He leads by example. I was very, very interested to watch the episode about Quinn Hughes on the Face-Off series. Like, he read like 30 books in the offseason about leadership, and like had extensive conversations with coaching and management staff about when to speak up and all that stuff. I'm interested to see how Austin Matthews does end up leading the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, obviously a big shift for the organization. It's another one of those things too. We're talking about Craig Berube trying to bring a different motivation technique, a different voice in the room, a different approach. Like, John Tavares, to his credit, has handled this superb, I thought. I think John Tavares deserves a ton of credit. These type of situations aren't always necessarily handled well. Like, at the end of the day, we are talking about humans. We're talking, I think Voth made a great point about the compensatory element and being elevated to that standard within an org. And we are talking about the most competitive individuals on the planet. That's why prideful. They are where they are. And very prideful. And for John Tavares handle this so delicately, so above board. Like Ricketts, you mentioned, his kids all wearing Austin Matthews jersey at the presentation. Those are the type of things that can go south if the person doesn't have the right attitude. Yeah. Speaking on the Winnipeg Jets, where we're from, we have a bit of familiarity with that, with the Blake Wheeler stripping of the captaincy, and that's still going off the road for a year. Yeah. John Tavares, in my mind, just elevated his legacy even more with how he handled the biggest market as the captain and being able to move forward without that title as if, like, it's all good. Like, we're still working towards something here. Historically in the NHL, past just even Blake Wheeler, I'm pretty sure when I was looking into this, when it did happen in Winnipeg, most captains that are stripped in the NHL are normally gone the year post it happening. And we're here talking about the idea John Tavares is likely going to sign a extension in Toronto at some point at a much lower dollar figure than what he's currently getting paid. I just think I have the ultimate respect for how John Tavares has handled this. This has been the biggest takeaway for me. Very curious to see now how Austin Matthews takes that next step. Great touches on the whole Quinn Hughes diving into all this different literature and talking to different people. How is Austin Matthews going to put his spin on this? Because I do too wonder, obviously we're not in the Leafs room, but I do wonder if maybe he's held back in recent years from how he would lead the group, not to step on a guy like Tavares' toes, right? Like, you still worry about that dynamic. So I'm curious to see what heights Austin Matthews, a proven top 3 player in this league as it is, now having that. Hey, I wouldn't argue. I go top 3 because I think Makar might be at the 2 spot. Top 2 center, though, for me. I'm curious to see what kind of elevation comes from him. Like he's a prideful guy himself, very motivated individual himself. Now the pressure, not that it hasn't been on Austin Matthews, but it's on him on a whole nother level. And I think that's exciting for a guy of that stature. So I'm curious where that goes.
Even the pressure thing, like I don't even think it's that big of a shift in pressure. It's like basically, I think going in from, knee height of water to waist height of water, right? Like he's already knows that he's likely pretty comfortable with it. Like I don't think it's that big of a problem. You know who really, to kind of like segue to more leadership stuff, you know who really impressed me in that NHL Faceoff series was Will Nylander's on ice leadership really caught my eye, and how he kind of like takes control of situations on the ice. Like I know Voth, you're talking about like how do we get more value out of Mitch Marner's contract. I think we fucking get it out of Will Nylander's and give him an A.
We're already getting it by moving him to center.
Yeah, I suppose, but like I love Will Nylander. Like I thought he was so cool in that.
Yeah, he's a rock star.
On this topic, me and Voth were actually texting him about this earlier this week. I do want to. Okay, so let's get into some of the Willie Nylander personality stuff. I want to jump to the center combo because I think it is fascinating for how the overall big picture of this team moves forward here. Me and Voth were talking about this week over text, and obviously now it's kind of the Mitch Marner contract situation's the big one, the big talk. But it was like the Willie Nylander was where Mitch Marner is now, and the one thing I think wasn't maybe talked about enough when you're talking about the idea of signing Willie Nylander is just how perfect he is for the Toronto market as personality-wise. Like, Willie Nylander might have some warts in his game. His personality might drive people crazy, but his personality is exactly why he's a very good hockey player in Toronto.
Yeah.
That no nonsense, doesn't give a shit what you think about him. You need that in that market to not go stir crazy. Like we actually see the inverse of it in Toronto where Mitch Marner tries to not have it care, but you can read it all over his face, all over his comments. You can
tell he's trying so hard, but he's
Willie just genuinely doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, that cavalier nature is real when he like you could see that's very genuine, very real for Nylander. And when Mitch Marner tries it, you can tell that it's very put on and not authentic. You can tell that. I hate it.
Like he's battling himself. He's battling himself to do it.
Yeah,
I would love to hear like a mic'd up moment of Mitch Marner with like an offhand comment that what happened in Nylander's, where it's like, just give me the fucking puck, man.
So I will say that type of stuff happens every fucking game. Like it's more of a story because it's Toronto. It was out there in the playoffs. That exact combo happens on every bench every single night. Yeah, but it was great to see. It was great to see Willie Nylander be the guy on the bench taking that moment and trying to make something of it. And it just supplies to me, like, I think he should be wearing an A in Toronto. I think he brings a type of leadership in how he approaches the market and his own game, and that's why he's great, that actually can calm the waters there a bit.
Yeah.
Who are you taking an A off of to put one on Willie?
Mitch Marner. You're not going to take one off of Morgan Riley. You're not going to take one off of John Tavares. You're taking it off of Mitch Marner.
You think that taking the A off of Mitch Marner's jersey in a contract year, when we've seen everything we've already seen from him, that's going to help him elevate his game? That's going to do the opposite. One thing I would love...
I don't give a shit. Reward a guy who's deserving of a reward.
I think that's a situation that's really delicate, and I don't think you can do that. What I would actually love to see for Mitch Marner is I would love to see him actually shed that weight that he carries. I'd love to see him go out there and just be like actually like William Nylander, where he doesn't care and just let his raw skill and joy for the game take over. And I think if there's a message I could send to Leafs fans this year, it's don't rag on this guy. Like, this guy is super talented.
Let's see.
He's unbelievably talented. Hey, Ricketts, you do what you're going to do, but when this guy's flipping pucks over the glass in Game 7, just know, like, this guy reads everything, I think. I think he hears it all.
Yeah. That's not my job to make his life easier. His job is to be better at hockey. I'm sorry.
He's
That's a fair
unbelievable
point.
at hockey.
So on Mitch
True.
Marner, let's start with Mitch Marner, and then let's get into some of the actual forecasting, lineup, training camp stuff, because obviously there's a ton of storylines around Toronto this year. Mitch Marner gonna be probably the annoying storyline every week. You're gonna hear about that contract every single week, and it's honestly something I hope we don't talk about every single week because nothing's gonna change until it does change.
And we're not gonna, because his agent always walks his UFAs to free agency. So what's the point of even wasting air on it unless he signs something?
But also, I want to establish here today where you both stand on Mitch Marner moving forward and this season. So that's what I want to establish, the baseline of where are we at on the Mitch Marner discussion, and then we'll move into some other things here.
Brady,
I'll
you
go
ahead.
first. I'll go first because I know I was just shitting on the guy, but you have to re-sign him if you can. You're not gonna. I don't think as much as salary cap is such a nice asset to have in the NHL today and the flexibility you can do with it. I don't think in the aggregate you're gonna replace his skill and talent and the point total overall that he brings from that same dollar value in the rest of the free agent market. Simple as that.
Where are you at, Voth?
So I also want to challenge that idea that the most valuable thing in the league is cap space, because eventually at some point the cap space has to get used to acquire talent for your on-ice product.
Yes.
And I think Nick and I were talking about this, but Mitch Marner is the kind of player you tank for.
Yeah.
Right? He's a top 5 winger in the league. Now, best case scenario, here's what I want to happen, is he signs the same contract as William Nylander. That's not going to happen. However, he's not going to get paid more than Austin Matthews. William Nylander gets 11. Matthews is at 13. We already know the number. The number is right there. And honestly, I don't think it's an unfair number. I don't think that there's going to be a ton of teams in free agency that are going to be able to offer him the 8th year or that number. So I feel like the path is right there. You have a player that is a top 5 player at his position in the league. He's the caliber of player that you tank for. The number's right there. It all comes down to, do you want to be here? Which he continues to say he does. I think it gets done, and I think the number starts with a 12. And probably has 9-3 at the end of it, because of course it does. Even though that's not his fucking number.
So the Marner stuff to me is so fascinating, because I find myself every day making a case for the other side of the argument, and I don't really know where I stand on it. On one hand, I completely agree with both of you, and it is a reality that you're not going to replace Mitch Marner at equal value through UFA. Likely through UFA, you're going to sign contracts you're going to hate in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So that just is a red alarm siren for me when you try and take that approach, because it's going to collapse on you more often than not. We saw it collapse on Brad Treliving in Calgary with the Kachuk situation.
Brad Treliving with cap space is a scary idea to me.
It is. I agree. The other side of it is, I do truly wonder how much the personality side and that stuff weighs on both an organization and a player. And just to kind of use the example I'm more familiar with, Blake Wheeler at his prime in Winnipeg was a top 5 right winger in the NHL. He carried Andrew Ladd and Brian Little to top 15 first line results. He was kind of that guy. He made the Olympic team. He was even underappreciated with the Olympics. Might be because he was an asshole and Torts saw through it. Could be exactly what went wrong there.
That would be the guy to see through it.
But I also do think that over the passage of time, you go from being able to handle that and deal with it and work with it to it drains on people. I think we've all worked with coworkers or bosses or people under us that, we'll make it work. And then it's 7 years down the line, okay, I'm fucking tired of dealing with this person. At some point, can we get some new blood in here? And that's where it gets complicated for me because, like, when I hear stories of Mitch Marner hiring security teams to chase down media and quiet things down, like, that's concerning to me as far as, like, a public perception. When I see the stories, there was, like, stories coming up that he was hiring security teams to, like, harass media for negative coverage. Like, that started
Mitch
leaking out
Marner
this
was?
summer. Correct.
I did not know about that.
And then, like, the grandma story, like, there's just so much stuff around his character that I do get concerned about. So it's interesting. You can't trade him. He's on a no-move clause. If you would have traded him this summer to any organization he signed off for, you were going to get hosed in that deal. Like, you weren't coming out of that a win. I just don't know where I'm at on signing him long-term. If you're just looking at the player, I think you guys are right. I do worry about some of the other stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. I think for a while for me, I thought a lot of that stuff came down to his dad, his agent, but it's been 7 years, and at some point, like, he hasn't replaced these. Well, you can't replace your dad.
Your dad, but yeah.
At
some point, you got to be the grown-up, right? At some point, like, these people are working for you.
Yeah, exactly. And at some point, like, this is an extension of you, and this is who you are, right? These people are a reflection of you, and if you're still allowing this to happen, the buck stops at you, right? So yeah, I wasn't aware of that story about the security guards chasing down the media. That's interesting.
That's insane. It's like it's bad shit.
That came out right around the end of the season. It was interesting that it even came out, but there was a couple of the local media there that covers the team that I want to say two guys said it happened to them.
I don't even think that's the most egregious thing. I think the most egregious thing is watching him walk down the aisle with his new wife and hit the fucking gritty. Like, shout out to my wife. It's her birthday today, and it was our first anniversary last week. But, like, this is a moment about the two of you, and you're fucking hitting the gritty down the aisle. Like, what are you doing? You colossal prick.
Okay, so let's move into
censorship. Hitting the gritty at your wedding.
Just an absolute zero move. Like, what are you doing? You see his wife trying to get in on it, and she just looks like lost. She's like, "What the fuck is this child doing? Who am I marrying?"
I will battle back on that pretty hard because I'm a big believer of just letting people live their life in their personal time, and I have just no issue of him doing the gritty. If that's what he wants to do for his wedding, I think it's an insane thing to get on people for. Personally,
I don't care if he does it on the ice. Like, whatever, do what you want. But, like, this is a moment for the two of you, and you're like.
I
think
his
that
day.
speaks to
it's
something.
His day. Hold on, it's his fucking day. Full stop.
It's his
fucking day.
It's gritty to hit.
Worry about the hockey stuff, the wedding stuff. No, you do not touch that. I'm sorry. You let people be people. No, like, you're wrong on this one. You do not go there.
Fine.
Let people be people. That is that's his lifestyle. What he wants to do.
I'm not super dug in on this take, but I saw it and I was like, "What are you doing, man?"
Super dug in. He said.
Moving on, though, let's talk some actual hockey here. Training camp, obviously, has been interesting. We've seen some PTOs. Max Pacioretty signing with the Leafs as rosters come to an end here. Guy like Yanni Hakanpää came in, though hasn't really been able to participate. What's been your biggest takeaways from training camp? And then let's move into some things you're excited about and some concerns around the Leafs this year.
Go ahead, Vother.
So I happened to notice that Simone Benoit got a breakaway in preseason, which, interesting. One of the things, I don't know exactly I can't recall where I heard it from, but one of the things that Berube was saying was that he really wanted the defense to activate. You know, they wanted them to be part of the offense, which is really weird when you consider what Brad Treliving went and gave Craig Berube for free agent defensemen like Yanni Hakanpää and, you know, even Chris Tanev. He's not like an offensive defenseman. Who else did he add? You know, you've got a decor there that you could tell them to activate.
OEL.
And I'm OEL, yeah, maybe. But, like, you don't really have the horses to do what the coach is asking. And I'm like, that just seems really odd.
I think you're selling a couple of guys already there a little short. Like, Mo Riley can jump up into play. Connor Timmins is an offensive defenseman. Timmy Lilligan can do it too. But
Timmy's not going to be there after today. Fuck.
Timmy's probably. Timmy's probably gone. Timmins is probably gone.
No, they got to keep one of the two.
It's interesting. Okay, so on that, I think that's a huge systematic plus as far as in today's game, and this is what frustrated me following my own team for a while. They would try to create offense with just the forwards, and you just can't anymore. The league's too good. You need at least a 4-man unit attacking. You need that defense creating that odd man situation. Goals come from creating odd man situations, whether it's on a power play, on the rush, off a cycle. You need that extra support. And so, like, seeing the guys jump, you want that to be a focal point of transition. But I do agree with Voth here on the style of D Trey Living has targeted in regards to that. We knew the big offseason talk around Trey Living was wanting to beef up the blue line, and last night we saw it in the preseason game. Not one D-man under 6'2" in the lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it's okay if they're mobile, but if they're not, it's going to kind of really hamper that aspect of it. What's your kind of thoughts here on that topic, Ricketts? And when are we sending Timothy Liljegren to Central Canada in Winnipeg?
Yeah, stop that. But it kind of comes across like trying to have your cake and eat it too a little bit, right? You want that size in the back end, rough and tumble, but then you're also looking to have like this offensive flair. Hard to come by in that sort of mix. So we'll see what happens. Like I really don't want Timmy Liljegren to be gone. I have a lot of belief in him. There was a tweet that I saw earlier today from Leafs fan Kevin Papetti. Awesome follow. Anyone in Leafs Nation too. So he says, quote, "The argument for keeping Liljegren is the Leafs have dominated his minutes, career 58% goals for percentage and 56.6 expected goals for percentage. The argument against Liljegren is that Timmins has similar results as a Leaf with 56.6 goals for percentage and 58.3 expected goals for percentage and makes nearly $2 million less."
Yeah.
I would like... It's tough because we've only really seen Liljegren in his career like steadily in like the third pair of minutes when I think when he's played up due to injury that he's actually performed really well in those. So I think whatever team he gets traded to, like they're going to get a surplus value on the trade that they make. Like the team acquiring Timmy Liljegren, not necessarily the Leafs. It's tough. I really believe in the guy. And like we'd hear stories from guys who were in the AHL talking about Liljegren when he was on the team, saying that he was easily the most skilled player on the team. I think you've got to believe in that, but yeah, he's probably gone.
Sat out the final exhibition game, not a good sign for him. And a lot of the one thing I look for, and rightly or wrongly, I think it's safe to say the guys that are covering teams and are closer to it, you start to see a narrative shift. When certain things are moving towards a certain direction, and we've seen the Liljegren shift happen over the last week and a bit, where he was in trouble and then now he's not playing. What do you think of the idea of Timothy Liljegren potentially not being on this decor, Vother? That is a big first round pick from years past.
Yeah, I think it's just tough. Like you keep seeing like flashes of it. And you keep wanting to see it happen. Like, remember, like, this guy was actually projected to go top 3 in his draft year, but then he got mono. And it's just...
Congrats.
It's getting... Yeah. So it's just... I don't know. Like, is he really going to be the type of player that Craig Berube likes? Is he going to be... Like, we already know Brad Treliving has little to no use for him. And... he's expensive. Like if he's going to be sitting in the press box, that's a very expensive popcorn eater, really.
100%. You can't put $3 million into the press box.
And for the Leafs, where they're at, like
cap-wise,
the Leafs
he's not even bad. That's the crazy part about him being a popcorn eater is he's good.
Do the Leafs have the time and patience where they are in their window to keep waiting for Timothy Liljegren to become what people think he can become? You know,
he's good. I don't get
it. He's expensive. Yeah, no, I agree. Like I think what you're seeing here is a coaching staff and a management staff misreading what's there. But let's all assume that they're right for just a second. They're not, but let's assume would you be willing to sit on a $3 million player in your press box, eating up cap space when you are desperately in win now mode? No team would do it. And so for that reason, yeah, like you need to go and try and, I guess, get something back from him. I will say, like, I'm sure they're going to absolutely biff this trade bad. Like, I'm sure whatever they get back for him is going to be junk. But
so it's funny too, because in their spot, if he's not going to be a top 6, and I'm getting the vibe he's not, I'm kind of on the outside here and just reading tea leaves. Given it's a win now window, depending, I can't see guys like Patches and Lorentz costing much. I expect both to be signed, right, based on their camp. Is that where we're kind of going up front? We'll get it up front in a second. Yeah, let me kind of segue my way into this. But if Liljegren's even a tweener, even if, let's say, he's a 6'7", battling for a spot at $3 million when you're a team this close to the cap trying to compete, you're actually better off having that cap space all year until the deadline and actually being able to go buy yourself an impact piece depending on what you need at that point. And that's kind of where I'd be, just in the situation you've laid out, Voth, is, yeah, if he's not looked at by this group as that guy, go get a draft pick for him and use that space later and just let it bank up for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's honestly probably the cap space that you needed to keep a Tyler Bertuzzi or a Zach Hyman. Which I bet they would have. Sure. I bet they would have loved to have kept Tyler Bertuzzi at the end of last season, but they couldn't. So, yeah, like I it's frustrating because a small part of me still believes that Timothy Liljegren is a legitimate top 4 D-man in waiting, but the runway is pretty short at this point. And I think actually Winnipeg would be a great fit for him. Like, I don't think Winnipeg's going to be that competitive this year. And you should, as an organization, have the patience to see if it's there.
And it sucks for you guys to hear this, but it's not going to cost much at this point.
No.
On that deal and knowing where he's at on the roster bubble.
What, a second or a third?
Something like that.
Yeah, that's probably what you're going to end up having. Like, yeah, it sucks. I think whatever team gets him is going to get a really good player that's going to fit into the top 4 of most teams.
And feel free to earmark this all for a conversation later in the season about how many defensemen the Leafs have developed in the last 2 decades.
And like, to preface this conversation too, like, we're, I think, an hour and a half out of when the waiver wire is live, or not live, but set today. Yep. So the Leafs, every team in the NHL has a lot of moves they got to make, because I think roster's got to be set this week, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Tomorrow, I believe, actually.
Tomorrow. So we're going to see all this, what we're talking about, this hypothetical, is probably going to come to a culmination of today or tomorrow. Yeah, and because there's got to be a deal to open up space even just to get Pacioretty and Lorentz probably in. Because right now, like, I've got DFO open, and there is a lot of like hazard signs, like those yellow things. So, like, yeah, back end we got Mo Riley, Chris Tanev, OEL, Jake McCabe, Simone Benoit, and Connor Timmins. Liljegren's not in there. And neither is Joni Hackenpah. And I don't even think we're going to see Hackenpah all year, if I'm being fucking dead honest with you.
If that's the case, why the hell did you sign him?
It's a weird situation, man.
What do you TIR him, I suppose? Like, whatever.
Why? What is this?
Insurance if he does get healthy enough at a certain point.
What insurance does he provide?
He's a big boy.
You need to get insurance for Yanni Hackenpah. Like, you probably need to go do a Timothy Liljegren for Logan Stanley deal just to have insurance on Yanni Hackenpah.
Let's go.
Look at Nick over there, eh?
Let's do a shadow realm. Hey, hit the timeline.
Let's touch on, outside the Timmy L combo, though, let's touch on the decor. I think it's an interesting decor this year in Toronto.
I don't hate it.
I think we all have a similar take on the Leafs decor potentially being over-talked about in years past. So we'll get into that. But what is our first blush at the current Leafs decor? I've said it for all summer. I love Chris Tanev beside Morgan Rielly, and if he's healthy, I actually think we might see the best version of Morgan Rielly because of it. Now, I'm a big Chris Tanev guy. Oliver Ekman-Larsson didn't love the term on it personally, signing up a guy 4 years after he gets bought out, who raked in third pair minutes for Florida. But there's an interesting player there because he is a guy that was a legitimate top pair guy early in his career and then just kind of fell off the well. Interesting bet. I think he's going to probably help win the PP units as well. Jake McCabe is scheduled, I believe, to be playing with him on that second pair, and there's rumblings of a long-term Jake McCabe extension to be announced. And then, we got Simon Benoit, Simon Benoit getting some breakaways in training camp, and guys like Timmins and Hakanpää. What's our overall feel on this decor? Let's start with Voth.
I think if you look at it on paper, it's improved, but I think there's some stuff there that I think there's some caution signs, I think, going up for me. One, you're looking at OEL as Stanley Cup champion OEL on the Florida Panthers, like a model organization, and you're looking at him being like, oh yeah, that guy can be something for us, but like your team's not the Florida Panthers. And this guy, like, he's probably closer to the OEL that Vancouver bought out than the OEL that Florida added for cheap. And you just paid
only
the
time will tell on that one though. But I think it's a better bet than John Klingberg.
Okay, congrats.
Of the same vein.
Congrats. You cleared the John. Though. You made a better signing than the John Klingberg one. Huge. Hang a banner.
I'm with you, Voth. I'm worried about that one too, big time.
And the Chris Tanev thing, like, we know he's going to Robidas Island at some point. It's just a matter of when. And like at his age, with his miles, with what he's been through, again, we're all looking at the Chris Tanev who was playing with the Dallas Stars, who is, again, an organization that is way further closer to a cup than Toronto.
To be fair, he was really, really good in Calgary, and that org's a shit show. So
yeah, it is. But that org actually had a good decor. They had Hannafin. That was a team like that was flawed up front because of all the players they lost in Tkachuk and Gaudreau, and they replaced them with the worst contract in the league. Yeah, but Chris Tanev was among a really good decor. Like Calgary had a good decor, and they had a good goalie. So it speaks well. It looks good on Chris Tanev, but now you're putting him in Toronto, a year older with more miles on him. I think you're going to be lucky if you get like a year or two out of this, and then it's right back. It's right back to the same thing where you have Morgan Rielly overmatched as a 1D, and who do you have coming? Is Topi Niemela ever going to make this team?
I will say, this is a pretty old team.
Very old.
Like, they need to win right now.
Old and expensive. Good recipe.
So, what you said, you thought the window was going to be closed more or less this year, Nick.
I did.
I don't mind the way this roster is built right now. Like, and even with the flexibility that's going to come next year, I think they got a bit more wiggle room than we might be giving them credit for.
The flexibility means nothing. It means nothing in Brad Treliving's hands. Like, that's nothing to look forward to.
I'm sick of calling you a believer. You're the most pessimistic man I know.
That is
it's getting old. It is getting old. I got to say, looking at the ages here, that is the one concern for me.
All Brad, like, it's old and expensive. And then next year, a potentially $24 million of cap space opens up, and Brad can go make it even older and more expensive by buying in the most inefficient market, which is unrestricted free agency.
Yes, true.
Okay, let's.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it. Finish that thought.
And then you burn the remainder of Austin Matthews short term, and you're left with William Nylander and Mitch Marner.
Retiring Leafs greats, baby.
That's going to be.
Someone get my man some diazepam. We're too high strung right now.
Let's move to the forward group though. This is an area all three of us agreed last week. Unfortunately, the audio didn't come out, where the spotlight should be probably more on and not necessarily the core. We all were in agreement that secondary scoring is really what's been costing the Leafs come playoff time. How are we feeling about that this year? Because I actually do think they took strides there.
Yeah. I like it. Right now, I'm looking at DFO. They don't even have Willie Nylander up the middle right now, which is interesting. They have him still on the wing on the second line with Tavares and Domi. What I like about the Leafs up front is they kind of have an abundance of centers, which is nice when you're building a roster. The third line they have listed right now is Max Pacioretty, Pontus Holmberg, Bobby McMahon. I fucking really like that. I like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust DFO too much right now.
No,
they've been off using spring or the preseason lineups that are playing.
But like I said last week, I think overall there's a lot of interesting and fun puzzle pieces in the Leafs front offense that like I think you get a lot of chance to experiment to see if you can find something that's kind of built with a bunch of dogs, really. Voth, I want to know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think, Nick, you kind of nailed it. Like, secondary scoring behind the core has been their issue. I think the steps that you're going to see from the core kind of come down to Matt Nyes. Like, I think if he can hit 50 points, that's huge. Nick Robertson is obviously torching the preseason right now. I'm not going to get my hopes up. He's not generational.
He's generational.
Stop it.
He's going to feed families.
Get this guy off our show immediately.
I'm just saying, take the Nick Robertson over on goals this year.
If Nick Robertson can give us 20 goals, that'd be amazing. And
he'll do that in his sleep, brother.
Okay.
Bobby McMahon's going to give us 20.
Oh my God. And then like you're looking.
Good drugs this morning.
What did you do last night? Were you doing black tar heroin?
No. Drinking a lot of bubbly and eating Shorty's pizza. Shout out.
It's a good one. Like you need those young guys to take a step. Obviously, like I think the young guys that we were really excited about, Cowan and Minten, I think those guys are on the out. Grebenkin is obviously the darling of preseason. I think he's out. I think that you can look for Grebenkin. He'll be with the Marlies. Cowan and Minten, I think, have to go back to their junior teams. It's fine. See him at the World Juniors, I guess.
I think Minten might be a touch too old.
Is Minten going to the Marlies?
I think he might.
That would be fun to watch. Good to see him develop there. I'm interested about guys like Steven Lorentz. Like I'm interested how if Connor Dewar can come back. I'm interested to see how they shape that fourth line a bit. Like, are you really going to roll out Reeves that often? Like I imagine that Reeves is a bit player at this point. Like he comes in a couple games here, a couple games there. He scores against Winnipeg. Good stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. After I troll him all day on Twitter.
Of course, sure. Nick just absolutely carving him on social media just to get dunked on him later.
I just need the maximum amount of Ryan Reeves flexing on the ice at all times. I love that move so much.
Yeah, I think opposing players should do that to him when they just breeze around him.
Fuck, him and Lorentz had a nice sequence last night.
They were kind of bash brother in it for real.
Yeah, that was sick actually.
That shift was art. It was nice to see.
Yeah, that was.
But it's preseason, but it seems like they have a few different candidates that could they could shape that fourth line in a few different ways.
Yeah.
But you
depending
really
on the matchup for sure.
I think Willie Matthews and Marner, those guys are going to do what they do. But you need Tavares, I think, is going to have a big year. It's a contract year. I think he's going to do well. I pencil him in for 25 goals. And it's going to come down to guys like Matt Nyes, Bobby McMahon, and Nick Robertson to take a step and provide that secondary scoring that is their main issue in the playoffs. That is every year the Leafs go out in the first round and a bunch of people clamor around. They're not good enough defensively. They need better goaltending. They need all the stuff. But really what lets them down every year is the scoring. You need to score more goals. So
And what we've seen in the small sample sizes from Nick Robertson, Bobby McMahon, and Matt Nyes, these guys can be point producers. It's just whether we can see it over a longer 82-point game season, and whether these guys can hold up to the grind of that too and stay healthy. Because Bobby McMahon got hurt for a point last year. Nick Robertson's been hurt. Matt Nyes is the only one who's been healthy, but that was also his rookie year where he's still trying to figure out the league too.
I'm glad you've come down to point producers and not heart candidates.
No, maybe not hard candidate, but Nick Robertson, I'd take the value on Rocket for sure.
I will say this year,
Sicko.
I do look at least on paper, I do like the depth scoring, or I like the potential of it more than years past. Obviously, they kept Max Domi too, right? Fan favorite, but
Yep.
his real skill set is to be an offensive producer. You're not getting any Selke level defense out of that guy. You want him adding to the score sheet and, getting a little chaotic here and there. We all enjoy that. I've always been actually, I wouldn't say always. I kind of came around on Nick Robertson like 2 training camps ago. I thought he had fixed his skating. It was starting to look better. I liked his camp last year, and unfortunately it didn't work for him. Obviously, he came out and left no doubt he should be on the roster this year in camp. Let's see if he can build off that.
That second Detroit goal was generational. Hard back check, get into Alex DeBrinket's fucking kitchen, come back on the other one, beat him down there and score on a beauty pass from Pacioretty. It's gonna feed me.
So I'm curious.
Is this what you want to use for the Plan the Parade meter?
Yeah, we're getting close. Nick Robertson should add some of that depth scoring. Matthew Nyes is a guy Friedman's been talking up like crazy, actually. I haven't seen him hype someone up quite this bit. And Matt Nyes was the guy me and Brady went back and forth on a lot last year. And I just thought Brady was a bit cooked on how high he had him last year. I think he's a good quality player.
Dude, I had him for the Calder.
Good stock. Hey, Nick, you and I have been in the Wealthsimple trade in the fucking trenches on it. Don't get mad at me for buying a stock super low and I'm watching it fly high, brother. Okay?
But you were valuing it up here, man. You were valuing it up here.
Hey, that's just called a good forecast, man.
I do think we're going to see a step out of Matthew Nyes. Like he was a guy that was a legitimate NHLer last year. I thought he figured out a lot of the game, and I think the offense is going to come there. He puts himself into good positions. I think you're going to get something there. We'll see with Nick Robertson, but I do think Nyes is going to be that guy.
Do you? I know Nick and you and I have talked about Nyes a lot, and I know you've always had him penciled. The ceiling for him is middle 6. Do you think, in light of what you've seen from him and what you're hearing, that maybe that ceiling's gone up, or do you think it's still the same for you as a middle 6 guy?
I might bump it to like
top 6.
I might bump it to like top 6. Like I think he's firmly gonna be a for sure middle 6. He might become that solid second liner. I don't see like a first liner there.
No, I don't.
But again, that's still a quality piece. I think for sure he's a quality middle 6. If he could become that stable second liner, and I think there's enough pieces in his game to think he can. I'm just very curious on the offense finally transitioning at the pro level. Like he skates well. He puts himself into good positions. He battles. Like there's a lot to like about the player.
His battle stuff is really good.
His compete is crazy. Like Robertson too. Like that's the thing that I like about these two players the most. Same with McMahon. Like all three of these guys,
too, he's a dog.
They're animals out there. Like I love the way they compete. They remind me of Zach Hyman when he got to the Leafs.
Yeah,
I think Leafs fans, as a general, we love hungry call-ups. We love guys trying to make a name for themselves because, like, for so long now, at least almost a decade, we've had guys who feel like they're pampered too much. So when there's someone that, like, a fan base can really resonate with, it goes crazy how much I ride for these dudes.
Unless your name is William Nylander, Leafs fans love players who are
That's just because he's European.
Yeah, because William Nylander's been him forever, and people, like, it took years. And now, like, it seems like that's churned. Like, it seems like the fan base now understands, like, no, this guy's actually, like, one of the best players on the team, and he competes the hardest.
The only people who don't subscribe to Will Nylander at this point are Baghead and his followers.
I'm still blocked.
The big depth scoring question: can Max Pacioretty stay healthy? That's an interesting piece, but that's a guy that just hasn't. Like, I can't bet on Max Pacioretty to be healthy for more than 30 games.
If there's one organization that you're willing to take a bet on a guy staying healthy with, is the Leafs one. They've had guys like Tyler Ennis. Tyler Ennis was a guy who's probably shouldn't have been playing much longer than he did. He ended up getting a contract after the Leafs. I think 2 of them. Like, I
think that's
I'm right.
big
I'm
reach.
right with you, Nick. Like when I
that's
saw
a big
initially
reach.
Max Pacioretty getting even a PTO, and then immediately after the PTO was like, oh, it's pretty much agreed upon that he's going to get a contract. I didn't love it because I in my mind it was. I said this last time too. Was like it seemed very much on the same lines of like the Joe Thornton or Patrick Marleau deals. And then I actually saw him play a couple of games in the preseason. And yes, it is preseason. But I thought he was serviceable if he can stay healthy.
Enjoy the 25 games, brother. That's all.
Sure, and I will, and I will. Then worst case, he goes on fucking LTIR. What do I care about anyways? It's a 1-year deal. Probably. Actually, he hasn't signed yet.
Okay, you gotta stop wanting to dump guys on LTIR. LTIR is not good. You do not want to be in LTIR.
You can't accrue cap space in LTIR.
Yeah. You don't want to just be wasting on some bum that can't play more than 40 games in a year anymore.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say what Pacioretty's going to be. Like he could
Pop, but
the best example of the Leafs doing this is for sure Jason Spezza.
Yeah,
but I don't have a. Oh God. We're gonna have to take a shot every time this guy calls someone generational.
The parameter for him is going to be high first week.
It always is. Beginning of the year, it's always high. But no, you are right. Like the best one to have done it so far at that older age, I'm not gonna call him old, is Jason Spezza. If we get like, realistically, even we get like 50, 60 games of a decently healthy Max Pacioretty,
that's a reach.
Yeah, it's a reach, but I don't think it's that out of the realm. Hopefully he stays healthy. He looks good so far.
That might be his last 3 seasons combined in games played here.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay, so we're going to bring in the plan the Pareto meter at the end of the show. I want to get into some of your biggest concerns, things you're most excited about, and your hottest takes going into the offseason. Then we'll touch on what your prediction is for the Leafs, and we'll do the plan the Pareto meter. Let's wrap this thing up with some exciting, throw some shit out there. What do you believe? Jordan Voth, let's start it off here. What is your one biggest concern and the thing you're most excited about around the Leafs?
I'm excited for cap space, but not really because Brad Treliving has it next summer. My biggest concern is that all those defensemen that Brad just signed are ancient and aren't going to be good, and they're not going to be an improved team at all. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for cap space. But
it is an exciting trait. What's your biggest concern with the Leafs this year?
It's got to be those old that Brad signed. They're old. They're so old. Like people are looking at this decor being like, this is the best decor we've had ever. And like I said, I think OEL's closer to the Vancouver OEL than the Florida one. And Chris Tanev looks awfully rosy on that Calgary decor, that Dallas decor, but it's a lot to ask for a 37-year-old. Like it's Mark Giordano all over again. Where's he at?
34. He's 34.
Okay, but the contract goes till he's 39.
Yeah.
It's ugly. There is real potential for that to not be good. Like they could bomb out like in the first month of the season, and people will be like, "I can't believe this happened." And it's like, well, look how old these guys are.
Yeah, that's
How many players at 34 do you really want to be paying top dollar to? Like Sidney Crosby, Ovi, McKinnon, Matthews, McDavid. That's the list. Draisaitl maybe. That's the list. Cale Makar. It's not very many players. Chris Tanev is not in that tier.
He's not paying him. Yeah, I was gonna say you're not paying premium money for him.
No, but $6 million. Is it $6 million or $4 million?
4.5.
That's.
It's a number 4 rate for a guy that's going to be playing top pair. That's pretty good. I'm going to come to, but since we got to wait for Brady to come back because he had a power outage. I'm going to go with my most excited. I'm excited to see with the Toronto Maple Leafs what Chris Tanev can do for Morgan Rielly's game. Chris Tanev is that dude as far as defending the zone and moving the puck and creating space for his defense partner. I think it's going to take off so much pressure from Morgan Rielly and allow him to play to his strengths. I'm excited to see what that pair looks like. That is the one thing I'm most excited to watch this year with the Leafs. Biggest concern, I'm with you too, is the age of this team. Looking at it right now, there's a lot of guys in their late 20s to their mid 30s, and you have to flick that switch right now if you're going to do it.
Yep. I think you're right. Like, I think the idea, like, if the Tanev thing works out, I think that's a perfect point to make, is that what could he unlock for Morgan Rielly?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've been talking about Tanev and how good he looks on his core and yada, yada. But what we haven't really talked about is how the core or the decor around Morgan Rielly has really kind of muted what he's probably capable of. He might be better than what, like, I think he might, it's hard to say. I think he might be a little bit underrated, but he plays, like, his D partners over the years have been just atrocious.
Yeah.
Like, he might actually be closer to a number one defenseman if he actually had a partner that was capable of playing. And,
for
you know,
sure.
not Ron Hainsey or whatever they've been doing for years.
It's going to be interesting. Let's take you to, what's your prediction on the Leafs this year?
Third in the division, and they lose in Game 7 in Round 1.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. Same old.
I'm gonna go. They are going to be. Let's see who their division is this year. I'm gonna say top two in the division. I'm gonna say they win a round and call it quits in the second.
Who are they beating in Round 1?
Who are they playing this year in round 1? Let's make a decision. Let's say Florida wins the division. I haven't even looked hard enough at who I think is going to win what division. They're going to beat the Boston Bruins in round 1.
Oh, my God.
Just to really, like, put
You're a
that.
sicko.
I know. And then there's going to be all the Swayman collapse stories out of Boston. You know, that contract got done today.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have Brady here. We're gonna wrap this up. We need to get where you are at on the plan the parade meter going into week 1.
I'm going to give it a Matt Sundin 13 out of 10. Make sure there's no local construction down Yonge Street. We got to plan that parade.
It sounds good.
Yeah,
surprises me after everything I've heard this episode, but
oh, hang on. I'll hang on. Let me stand in for Brady here. I'll even say it's generational parade.
Generational parade. All right. Well, that's what I like to hear, Voth. It was a lot of fun doing this. You go enjoy your wife's birthday.
I will.
I'll give Brady our best, and we'll be back every Sunday recording about your blue and white. Make sure you like, subscribe, be here every Monday for the release, and we're gonna build something here. A little Winnipeg-centric Leafs corner. I know you got that Facebook group. Let's bring the Leaf fans together. Let's grow this thing. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We'll talk soon here.
All right, you have a good one, Nick.
This has been a Top
Take care,
Line
buddy.
Media production. This has been a Top Line Media production.